Okay, cool. I go. Ladies and gentlemen, we think it's really ironic that side proposition wants to reject all our perceived harms. Side proposition wants to reject all the apparent perceived things that we brought into today's debate. Yet they've suggested and given a policy where we're supposed to trust in the future, where we're supposed to trust that somehow all these harms are going to go away. So if they want to prove to us that in the long term, a future that hasn't happened yet, that all the harms are going to be made worse, something as abstract as the future, it means that all their harms and all their analysis doesn't exist in the first place. It means that all their harms exist on some random plane which we can only access in 7, 8 years when rhinos are actually going to die out, when rhinos are actually not going to be inbred in our society. And we have 3 important questions to ask in today's debate. Firstly, what are the current harms that legalizing can solve? Secondly, do we protect the rhino? Thirdly, do we protect society? And before I go into my positive matter, they decided to set this burden to us that we were somehow supposed to prove that if regulation could work as much for us, then it could work as much for them. Ladies and gentlemen, we just think it's preposterous to propose that they have to regulate a ban. When have you ever heard of regulating something that is illegal? They can only have a ban and they can only have regulation. Regulation can only exist under our model. And how does this regulation exist? Well, the first important question is, are we going to solve the current harms? And we told you from the beginning of the debate that we're going to solve the harms of, firstly, the black markets for 2 reasons. Why? Because it's going to be cheaper, and secondly, because we're going to reduce costs. Why? Because we're going to prevent it, because we're going to impose taxes on shops, which are going to be a lot cheaper than the black market. And secondly, when they sell it, they sell at profits, not like the black market, where they rip off people, where it's not going to be cheap. And their only analysis to this was that, okay, when we expand the black market and we flood the market, it's just going to get bigger and it's going to be unmanageable and somehow we're not going to get it. Well, we think this is predicated on the assumption that we don't have the resources to regulate the black market. It's predicated on the assumption that there's not enough rhino supply, when we told you from the beginning that we have thousands and thousands of stockpiles to sell to people. But then, secondly, their only analysis towards this was that, okay, we have monetary capacity and value. Somehow, when this black market expands, we're not going to be able to manage it. That just simply didn't make sense, ladies and gentlemen. If we beg the question, if we couldn't manage any of the markets that exist in society today, would we be able to have any functioning society? We don't think it makes sense in that way. And then they secondly told us, and then we brought you the line that we're going to reduce these costs because we're going to have education, and we're going to educate people because currently people don't understand how this works and it only exists in a legal system. And they told us that, okay, we can also have education, that's fine for us to have it. They couldn't understand the mutual exclusivity of this point, ladies and gentlemen. Because you can't educate people against buying rhino horn when people can't even buy rhino horn in the first place. We're allowed for people to buy rhino horn, and we're therefore educating them on what is true and what is false. Shame. And then this quick issue of buy-in, where all their harms are predicated on the idea that somehow people are going to have these perceived areas where they're not going to be able to understand anything. Well, they told us how people already want to protect rhino. We beg the question, why wouldn't they want to protect rhino by purchasing rhino horn from the legal mechanism? But then on top of that, they told us that people are vulnerable, people don't care, people can't do this. Yet at the very same time, they were telling us that animals, we protect animals because of their not because of mental capabilities, not because of mental abilities. So if someone is vulnerable, they should be able to support access. And then the quick second question in this debate is, do we protect the rhino? And they wanted to tell us that it was inherent on their experiences. Rhinos should be able to experience mating, breeding, and fighting. Well, we need an enforceable provisions, ladies and gentlemen. How are they going to experience all of this if they can't even experience life in the first place? And he said that in order for rights to be recognized, they need to be enforceable. We can't enforce these rights under system of illegality where we have absolutely no power of effecting some sort of change. And lastly, quickly, this issue of is it going to protect society? They fail to deal with all our harms of how we're going to be forcing cultures to use illegal mechanisms, how we're going to undermine these cultures.
The House thanks all the speakers and would like to close the debate. And whilst the adjudicators leave, I would like to invite both teams to cross the floor and shake hands.